Aisha Sharma was just 22, bright and full of dreams, while her father, Rajesh Sharma, prided himself on his family's spotless reputation. But when Aisha secretly fell for her father's powerful boss, Vikram Malhotra, that forbidden relationship ignited a chain of events that would destroy their family forever. In the quiet suburbs of Pune, the Sharma family lived in a modest two-story house painted pale yellow, surrounded by bougainvillea vines. From the outside, they appeared to be the picture of peace and respectability. Rajesh Sharma, a disciplined man in his late 40s, worked as an accountant for a successful business tycoon, Vikram Malhotra. His reputation was spotless. He was known for punctuality, honesty, and a stern but fair nature. His wife, Meena, devoted her time to running a small home catering service, preparing meals for nearby offices, and earning enough to support their daughter's education. Their only child, Aisha, was 22, bright, ambitious, and loved by everyone who knew her. Neighbors often spoke about the Sharmas as the perfect family, always polite, always together during evening walks, and never involved in gossip or drama. Rajesh took pride in keeping his household disciplined, while Meena maintained harmony between father and daughter, carefully avoiding arguments that might disturb the fragile calm. Aisha was a quiet observer, respectful yet curious about the world beyond her family's rules. She dreamed of working in Mumbai someday, of independence and adventure, but such dreams were never voiced aloud. Inside their home, love existed, but it was laced with fear. Rajesh's sense of pride shaped every decision. He valued reputation above emotion, believing that a family's worth depended on what others thought. Meena lived in the shadow of his authority, supporting him but silently worrying about Aisha's growing restlessness. Though they dined together and smiled for photographs, cracks had begun to form beneath the surface, invisible to outsiders but slowly widening each day. The Sharma's world looked perfect, yet it only needed one secret to shatter that illusion forever. It was during the grand Diwali celebration hosted by Rajesh's company that Aisha first met Vikram Malhotra. The event was filled with glittering lights, the sound of laughter, and the scent of expensive perfumes. Vikram stood out effortlessly, confident, graceful, and dressed in a crisp white kurta that seemed to command attention. He was nearly twice Aisha's age, but his charisma drew people to him. When Rajesh introduced his daughter to his boss, Vikram complimented her intelligence and ambition, mentioning how rare it was to meet young people who spoke with such purpose. That moment, though ordinary to others, quietly altered the course of Aisha's life. A few days later, Vikram sent her a polite message on social media, thanking her for helping organize the event. Their exchanges began casually, then grew more personal. He admired her simplicity, and she admired his confidence. Soon, texts turned into late-night calls filled with gentle encouragement and emotional warmth. Aisha began to feel seen in ways her family never made her feel. For her, Vikram represented everything her sheltered life lacked: freedom, understanding, and excitement. Vikram, on the other hand, found in Aisha the youthful admiration that his corporate world could never offer. Despite being married with 2 teenage sons, he justified his actions by convincing himself it was harmless affection. But their relationship deepened quickly. Secret meetings replaced phone calls, and small gifts began appearing: a bracelet, a book, a note written in his elegant handwriting. Aisha was lost in the illusion of being loved, unaware of the dangerous imbalance of power between them. What began as admiration had quietly turned into an affair, one that would soon spiral beyond their control and drag both families toward irreversible tragedy. Rajesh began noticing changes in his daughter that disturbed his carefully ordered world. Aisha had always been predictable, early to rise, focused on her studies, polite to everyone. But lately, she seemed distracted, smiling at her phone during meals, leaving home with vague excuses, and returning late with unexplained joy in her eyes. Her once simple clothes had been replaced by carefully chosen outfits, her perfume stronger, her manner oddly secretive. When Rajesh questioned her, she brushed it off as stress from university projects. Meena, ever the peacemaker, told him not to worry, insisting that young people behaved differently these days. Yet his instincts, sharpened by years of routine and control, told him something was wrong. It wasn't just her behavior that troubled him. His colleagues began making small remarks, teasing him about how close his boss seemed to be with his daughter during office functions. One even mentioned seeing Aisha in Vikram's car near the city mall. Rajesh laughed it off in public, but carried the humiliation home like a burning weight. That night he sat alone in the dark, his thoughts turning bitter. Pride began to whisper that his family's respect was being quietly stripped away. He started observing Aisha more closely, pretending indifference but noting every movement. He checked her phone when she wasn't home, but found it locked. He followed her once, only to lose sight of her near the main road. Each unanswered question deepened his anger. He convinced himself that he wasn't being paranoid. He was protecting his family's honor. Meena noticed the tension but dared not interfere. The perfect calm of the Sharma household began to fracture, and beneath Rajesh's quiet expression, something dangerous was starting to grow, suspicion turning into obsession. One afternoon, while Aisha was out at college, Rajesh decided to confront the gnawing unease that had taken over his mind. He walked into her room quietly, his hands trembling as if committing a crime. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air, and the soft hum of her laptop drew his attention. Driven by a mix of fear and anger, he opened it. At first, he found nothing unusual: academic documents, photos of friends, a few saved assignments. But then he noticed a hidden folder titled Memories. Inside were dozens of pictures of Aisha with Vikram Malhotra, smiling together at a resort, sitting side by side at restaurants, holding hands like lovers. Each image felt like a knife twisting deeper into his pride. He scrolled through messages filled with affection, promises, and plans for a future together. Vikram's words were confident, intimate, and possessive. Aisha's replies were filled with emotion, trusting every word he said. Rajesh felt his world collapse. The man he respected, the man he served loyally for years, had crossed a boundary so deep that it could never be forgiven. For a long time he sat motionless, staring at the screen, hearing only the sound of his own breathing, shame mixed with fury, until his thoughts turned poisonous. He imagined the whispers of neighbors, the mocking smiles of relatives, and the judgment that would follow if the truth came out. To him, it wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. When Aisha returned home that evening, she sensed something off in his silence. Meena tried to speak, but Rajesh walked past them both without a word. That night, the warmth of their home vanished, replaced by a cold, invisible wall that none of them dared to break. The days that followed were filled with unbearable silence. Rajesh withdrew completely from his family, speaking only when necessary, his eyes dark and unreadable. The laughter that once echoed through their small home disappeared. Meals were eaten in quiet tension, every clink of a spoon sounding louder than words. Meena noticed the change, but was too afraid to ask what had happened. She saw the way Rajesh looked at Aisha, not with anger alone, but with disappointment so deep it felt like hatred. Aisha tried to act normal, but her father's coldness terrified her. She knew he had found out. Rajesh stopped going to work, claiming illness, though everyone in the neighborhood sensed otherwise. He spent hours sitting by the window, staring at nothing. Meena begged him to return to the office, to let things go, but he remained silent, consumed by humiliation. Relatives began calling, asking why Rajesh hadn't been seen at the company or in the temple. Rumors began to spread, quiet but poisonous, about something being wrong in the Sharma household. Aisha, desperate for forgiveness, wrote letters to her father but never had the courage to give them. She avoided her mother's gaze, knowing Meena's tears carried both love and fear. Rajesh's mind grew darker each night as he replayed the images on Aisha's laptop. He convinced himself that his family's name had been ruined forever, that the shame could never be washed away. Meena tried to reason with him, but her words meant nothing. Somewhere deep inside, Rajesh made a silent decision that the only way to restore what he believed was lost honor was through an act so final no one would ever question him again. The tragedy had already begun, even though no one yet realized it. The storm arrived without warning that Sunday night, rain lashing against the windows as thunder rolled across the city. Inside the Sharma home, the air felt heavier than the storm outside. Rajesh had barely spoken all day, his face pale, his mind far from the world around him. Meena moved about the kitchen in silence, her hands shaking as she prepared dinner that no one would touch. Aisha stayed in her room, unaware that the silence in the house was the calm before something irreversible. Late that night, Rajesh called Aisha into the living room. The sound of his voice made Meena freeze. She followed slowly, her heart pounding. Aisha stepped out hesitantly, expecting another argument. Outside, the rain drowned every sound. No neighbors heard the faint scuffle, the muffled sobs, or the breaking of something more fragile than glass, a bond that could never be repaired. When it was over, Meena stood frozen, unable to believe what she had witnessed. Rajesh's hands trembled as he wrapped their daughter's lifeless body in a bedsheet. Meena begged him to stop to think, but his eyes were hollow. He said only one thing, that no one must ever know. They waited until the rain softened, then carried Aisha to the car. The drive was silent, the world around them eerily calm. By dawn, Aisha was gone, buried near an abandoned quarry outside the city. Rajesh returned home, his clothes wet, his face expressionless. When the sun rose, they filed a missing person report, pretending to be grieving parents. Their lie was clean, their story rehearsed. For a short while it worked, but guilt has a way of whispering louder than silence, and soon their secret began to unravel. 2 weeks after Aisha's disappearance, the city woke to breaking news that a decomposed body had been discovered near an abandoned quarry on the outskirts of Pune. Construction workers had stumbled upon it while clearing debris. The body was wrapped in a stained bedsheet, partly buried under loose soil. Police arrived quickly, cordoning off the area as word spread through the neighborhood. Within hours, photographs of Aisha began circulating online alongside the chilling headline, "Missing Girl Possibly Found Dead." Meena fainted when officers came to their door. Rajesh stood motionless, his face unreadable, pretending to be in shock. At the police station, Rajesh repeated his story carefully, that Aisha had left home after a disagreement and never returned. He claimed she had been seeing someone, though he didn't know who. But detectives noticed small cracks in his story. His hands shook, his eyes avoided theirs. When the forensic team confirmed that the jewelry and clothing matched Aisha's, the case turned from missing person to suspected homicide. Detectives began tracing Rajesh's movements on the night Aisha vanished. His phone had been switched off, but the car's GPS told a different story. A late-night trip to the exact area where the body was found. They questioned neighbors who mentioned hearing strange sounds during the storm. Rumors multiplied. The once respected Sharma family became the center of scandal. Rajesh tried to appear calm, but guilt had begun to erode his composure. Meena barely spoke, haunted by the secret they shared. The police intensified their search for evidence, convinced that the killer was much closer to home than anyone wanted to believe. The illusion of innocence was collapsing, and the truth was preparing to surface. After days of interrogation, Meena finally broke. Exhausted and trembling, she confessed everything the police had suspected. The truth spilled out in fragments. The argument that night, Rajesh's uncontrollable rage, the moment he rapped, his hands around their daughter's neck while she screamed for mercy. Meena sobbed as she described how she had tried to stop him but failed, how fear and shock had frozen her body. She admitted helping him afterward, terrified of what he might do if she refused. The confession stunned the investigators, who immediately arrested both parents. Rajesh initially denied everything, maintaining his story of innocence, but Meena's detailed account left no room for doubt. The police recovered traces of Aisha's blood from the living room floor, despite the attempt to clean it. Phone records confirmed the timeline, and the GPS data sealed his fate. When Rajesh was finally confronted with the evidence, his silence was louder than words. He simply lowered his head, whispering that he had done it to protect his family's honor. News channels exploded with coverage, labeling the case as another horrifying example of an honor killing. Social media erupted with outrage. People who had once admired the Sharma family now cursed their name. Neighbors gathered outside the house, some crying, others recording videos to post online. The story became national news, sparking debates about parental control, pride, and the dangers of obsession. Rajesh and Meena were taken into custody as the cameras flashed. The same neighbors who once praised them now looked at them with disgust. In the courtroom of public opinion, their guilt was already decided. What Rajesh saw as an act of honor was now viewed as the ultimate disgrace, a father destroying his own family to protect an illusion. While Rajesh and Meena faced the full force of public condemnation, Vikram Malhotra remained curiously untouched. Police questioned him several times, but his answers were polished and calm. He admitted to knowing Aisha through her father's office and attending the same company events, but denied any romantic involvement. When asked about the photos found on her laptop, he claimed they were manipulated, insisting that someone was trying to destroy his reputation. Without direct proof linking him to the murder, the authorities could not charge him. His lawyers handled the situation efficiently, ensuring every trace of scandal was quietly erased. Within weeks, Vikram's company issued a brief statement expressing condolences and announcing Rajesh's termination due to his arrest. The firm distanced itself from the tragedy completely. Behind closed doors, Vikram transferred his assets, sold his Pune property, and prepared to leave the country. His wife, aware of whispers about his connection to Aisha, avoided public appearances. Soon, the Malhotra family relocated abroad, claiming it was for business expansion. Online, however, Vikram's name became synonymous with guilt. Countless people accused him of manipulating Aisha and escaping justice. Comment sections overflowed with anger, labeling him the invisible villain who had triggered the entire chain of events. But the outrage faded, as it always does. New stories replaced the old, and Vikram's scandal slowly disappeared from the headlines. For Rajesh and Meena, however, time froze. Every day in their prison cell replayed the same memory. Aisha's face, her laughter, her betrayal, and their irreversible crime. While Vikram lived freely in another country, they remained trapped, with the echo of what they had done, realizing too late that their idea of honor had destroyed everything truly worth protecting. Years passed, and the Sharma home remained abandoned, its windows clouded with dust, the garden overgrown with weeds. Locals whispered about the tragedy that had once shaken their quiet suburb. The story of Aisha's death became part of neighborhood lore, a cautionary tale of pride and secrecy. Occasionally, someone would glance at the darkened house and shiver, imagining the stormy night when the family's life had turned into horror. Aisha's grave near the abandoned quarry was unmarked, hidden among weeds and stones, visited only by those who had read her story online or felt a strange pull of empathy. Friends who had tried to support her were long gone, unable to comprehend the weight of a loss that could have been prevented. Her dreams of independence, of studying in Mumbai, and building a life of her own had been violently erased, leaving only whispers and photographs that no one dared to keep in the open. Rajesh and Meena served their sentences, their days filled with regret, guilt, and endless reflection. Rajesh, who had once prided himself on honor and reputation, discovered that no act, no matter how extreme, could restore what he had destroyed. Meena lived under the shadow of her complicity, haunted not only by fear, but by the memory of her daughter's last moments. The world outside moved on, indifferent to their suffering, but inside, time had stopped. The tragedy served as a chilling lesson about the dangers of control, pride, and obsession. A family's reputation, once thought to be everything, had crumbled into nothing. In the end, the so-called honor they had tried to protect had been lost forever, leaving only sorrow, regret, and a haunting question. What price is paid when love is punished in the name of pride? The silence of the house, the emptiness of the grave, and the absence of laughter told the story more vividly than any headline ever could.